This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay. Baruch haba and welcome everybody. Thank you everybody for joining today's Shiur, Parshas Balak. Today's Chumash Shiur is sponsored by Mrs. Glatstein. Mrs. Hillel Glatstein, Leiloi Nishmas, her mother. Today is her yahrzeit. Her name was Chai Chana Bas Chai Mordechai Allah Hashalom. She should be a Melitza Yeshara for her whole family, for Simchas, for Nachas, for Besuras Toivos, for Gezind, for Yiddish Nachas, Ad Bias Goyal Tzedek, Tehei Nishmatza Tzura B'Tzar Achayim, Im Hashem Aleikav. Okay, so for today's Chumash Shiur, like we've been doing the last couple of weeks, we're going to see a few Divrei Torah from this week's sheets. Again, you go to our site, rabbidg.com. While there, you could see, Bez Hashem, we're planning a trip this coming weekend, it's next weekend, to Hungary, to Mekamas HaKodesh in Hungary, in Poland. Actually, we had a change of schedule. We were scheduled to go to the Chafetz Chaim and Reb Chaim Volozhiner, but Belarus is now closed, so instead we're going to the Bnei Yissaschar and Lublin. Okay, so if you want to get the sheets to your inbox every Friday, you go, you subscribe over here, you just click, you put in your email address, and it's yours. So we're going to see today one Dvar Torah from the English sheet, produced by Reb Mordechai Levitan, Umishpachtoi. We're going to, here, this week is Parshas Balak. So we go to Parshas Balak over here, and we're not going to do all of them. I'm going to focus on the final one. And then we're going to see some Divrei Torah from the Ben Lashri. Okay, so the pasuk says, "Mi mana afar Yaakov u'misparas Rova Yisrael tamois nafshi mois yesharim u'sehi acharisi kamayu." Literally, who counted the dust of Yaakov? Rashi says, who could count the mitzvahs that we do with dust, namely Kisoi Hadam and others, and who could count the seed of the Jewish people, the holy unions of Klal Yisrael? But the Chassam Sofer, who by the way we're going to visit him a week from today, he notes that Klal Yisrael is referred to as different names in this pasuk. We're called Yaakov and we're called Yisrael. Yaakov refers to Klal Yisrael on their lower madrega. Yisrael refers to them on the higher level. So the Chassam Sofer interprets this homiletically, namely, Mi mana afar Yaakov. Only he who could count and enumerate and understand the low status of the Jewish people, u'misparas Rova Yisrael, could appreciate the good that is in store for Yisrael in the end of days. We know we ask Hashem, Samachenu kimaisin nisanu. Please Hashem, gladden us, commensurate with the days of affliction. Hashem, we've suffered 2,000 years of galus. Please Hashem, give us goodness and salvation, at least commensurate with those 2,000 years of misery. However, the Chassam Sofer points out that not only is the good times commensurate with the bad times, but more than that. We know Hashem's midah of midas hatava, midas achesed, is 500 times greater than the midas hadin. So, mimana afar Yaakov, he who could count the lowly status of Yaakov, the dust of Yaakov, the challenging times of our history, only he will be able to appreciate the amount of good that is in store for them in the future. So, as the 3 weeks are coming, which are 3 weeks mourning the tragedies of the Jewish people, and there were a lot of them, the book of Kinnos is quite a big book. Eicha is quite a sizable sefer. Nevertheless, from there we could begin to extrapolate that if these are the bad times for the Jewish people, then God's midah of Toiva, which is 500 times greater, we could extrapolate and glean from there the magnitude of the chesed and the hatava of the Achros Hayamim. And in that sense, we could suggest that that is why Tisha B'Av is a moyed. It's a Yom Tif. Because from the tragedy of Tisha B'Av, we could then extrapolate and glean the magnitude of the chesed of the Achros Hayamim. Now, we go to the a few interesting chidushim of the Ben La'ashri on this week's Parsha. The Tzaddik of Ranana. Let's see, right over here. Beautiful. Here we go. The Tzaddik of Ranana. Now, some of the pieces we already saw in our Chumash here, and okay, number one, an interesting remez. We've learned many times that every letter in the Aleph Beis has a numerical value, but besides that, the final letters of the Aleph Beis also have a numerical value. The final Chaf being 500, the final Mem being 600, the final Nun being 700, the final Pei being 800, the final Tzadi being 900, and then Aleph is Elef, 1000. Okay, so if we would take the gematria of Bilam, we would come out, the numerical value of Bilam is 702. 702 is the gematria of Shabbos, which is very interesting, that Bilam and Shabbos have the same numerical value, as if what Bilam represents in Tumah, Shabbos represents in Kedusha. Shabbos is the day that testifies to Hashem's creation and his hashgacha pratis, and Bilam was one who sort of dismissed the divine intervention in the world. Another interesting gematria is that Ben is gematria 702, the final Nun being 700, and Bilam is gematria 702. That being the case, if Ben is 702 and Bilam is 702, maybe another element is Bilam was coming to be Mevatel, the Inyan that we are Banim Lamakim. So that is our second offering. And now I want to tell you a very frightening offering. Unfortunately, Klal Yisrael has now suffered the third devastating tragedy involving people being basically buried alive. We had the Meron tragedy, we had it in Stalin, and now we have this building in Surfside where there were many Yidden there. It's a frightening thing. The Ben La'ashri brings a gematria. The numerical value of Balak and Bilam is 274. Ra'ad, earthquake. The numerical value of Balak and Bilam is 274. He also brings that on the side of Kedusha, there is a power of 274. Namely, Rachel and Leah is 274. Also, Mordechai is 274. Now, if you add up the two 274s, namely Rachel and Leah and Mordechai, you get Timchak, to destroy, as if we need to destroy Amalek. And that is because through Balak and Bilam, it produces Amalek. How's that? Bilam has the letters Ayin, Mem, Lamed. Balak has the Lamed and the Kuf. Together, Bilam and Balak produce Amalek. Their kayach of 274 produces Amalek. And therefore, we have to be moichek them. The gematria of Mordechai 274 and Rachel and Leah 274 is Timchak, to destroy the Amalek that comes from Bilam and Balak. Then we've said over on Wednesday night, by the way, we want to hear an amazing thing, the Wednesday Shiur, the Wednesday night Shiur. The main Maramakim was who? The Maharit, Rabbi Yosef Trani. And then we quoted the Tzafnas Paneach, Rabbi Yosef Trani. Unbeknownst to me, Wednesday night, the first time we quoted the Maharit was the Maharit's Yartzeit. Isn't that amazing? Somebody showed me in the morning, it was the Maharit's Yartzeit. Okay, by the way, that's not the first time it happened, it's happened many, many, many times. Okay, we quoted Rav Meir of Parmishlan. Why is this Parsha named after a Goy, a Rasha? So Rav Meir Parmishlan said humorously, it's named after a guy because he was an Erlich guy, because he was Mekayim, the halacha biyadua she'esav soine liYakov. But That being the case, the Ben Lashri adds another nakuda, another nugget of why the Parsha is named after Balak, is the Gemara says that all of Klal Yisrael's happiness and benefit in this world comes from the bracha that Bilam gave Klal Yisrael. You know why? Because I want to tell you another thing the Ben Lashri says. Remember the whole Wednesday night shiur? We don't know, is Balak, is he like Rashi says from Midian? Is he like the Ramban says from Moav? The Arizal says Balak was a descendant of Yisroi. In that case, that would make Balak a Midiani. Is that interesting? So that's another curveball into this whole subject, that he was from Yisroi. But anyway, the Ben Lashri writes that everything that Klal Yisrael eats in this world is from the blessing of Bilam. Because Esav comes to us and he says, you guys, the fact that you get Olam Haba, I understand. God gave you Olam Haba and He gave me Olam Hazeh. But why do you have Eretz Yisrael? Why do you have Olam Hazeh? So the answer we tell him is because your prophet Bilam blessed us, so he gave us Olam Hazeh. Who hired Bilam? Balak. So we can't be a Kafei Tova. We're very indebted to Balak. It's because of Balak that we have all of our benefit in Olam Hazeh. And therefore, because of him, therefore we've named the Parsha after him. So that is offering number 3 of the Ben Lashri. And I'll share with you one more. There's a very interesting medrash that when Balak hired Bilam, Bilam said, I can't curse them. Balak said, why not? So Bilam said, because they wear Shabbos clothing and they go to the rabbi's drasha. Huh? That's why he can't curse them? Because they wear Shabbos clothing? And then they go to the rabbi's drasha? What is that supposed to mean? That they wear Shabbos clothing. So the Ben Lashri says as follows. The Bnei Yissaschar, which by the way we're going to visit him now also, he says a very interesting thing. We know schar b'hayam malaka. There's no reward in this world for mitzvahs. Don't think you're going to do mitzvahs and be rewarded in this world. There's no reward for mitzvahs in this world. Nevertheless, there are certain things you are rewarded for in this world, and that is honoring the Shabbos. The Marsha says, for kavod Shabbos, you're get schar in this world, because that's not the ikar mitzvah. That's just the extra chavivus that you demonstrate for the mitzvah. So for that you could be rewarded in this world. Furthermore, the Medrash says in Mishlei that at the time that the Chacham is Yoshev v'Doiresh, Hashem is Moichel the Averos of Klal Yisrael. So Balak says to Bilam, I don't understand these people. They don't deserve Eretz Yisrael. We need to curse them. So Bilam says we can't curse them. Number one, they wear Shabbos clothing. So they have schar even in this world. And number two, they go to the drasha. And for the attendees of a drasha, one of the great rewards that accrue to those who attend the drasha is mechilas avonos. So that is 5 offerings on the Parsha, 1 from the English sheet, 4 from the Ben Lashri. If you want to hear all the Divrei Torah from the Ben Lashri, go to the OU website and the All Parsha app or the All Parsha site, and you could hear all the Divrei Torah from the Ramban on the Parsha, the Balaturim on the Parsha, the Ben Lashri on the Parsha. This is just a little flavor. Okay, and now we will progress to the Shiur on Tefillah. Okay, hang on one second.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.